The US has condemned what it called a reckless maneuver by a Russian jet, which has brought down an American drone. The fighter jet collided with the propeller of the drone as it was flying over the Black Sea south of Ukraine. The US military says the unmanned drone was over international waters and posed no threat. Let's bring in our correspondent, Shihab Rattansi. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. It's a very strongly worded statement from the US government, as you'd expect, Shihab. What more do we know about the incident? What more are they saying?
Well, the incident occurred at 7 a.m. local time, so 6 a.m. GMT. In fact, two Russian fighter jets had been shadowing this Reaper drone, which the U.S. says was over international waters, a spy drone, clearly an area of sensitivity to the Russians. The Russians clearly feel that, with the Black Sea, the vicinity of Crimea, this is their sphere of influence. It's actually pretty common, I think, that we have that kind of shadowing between adversarial fighter jets and aircraft and drones in this area and in other regions around the world. What's different, of course, is this collision. But I will read out just a little bit from the statement from U.S. European Command. And all we have right now is confirmation from the U.S. It has to be said, we haven't heard from the Russians. But it does spell out quite a detailed narrative. It says one of the Russian Su-27 aircraft struck the propeller of the MQ-9, the drone, causing U.S. forces to have to bring the MQ-9 down in international waters. Several times before the collision, the Su-27s dumped fuel on and flew in front of the MQ-9 in a reckless, environmentally unsound and unprofessional manner. The incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional. That's quite interesting, that stressing of a lack of competence, which suggests perhaps that the U.S. may think it may have been an accident, may have been unintended, at least the collision itself. But then the statement does go on to warn the Russians about aggressive actions that are dangerous and could lead to miscalculation and unintended escalation, which I think is why we're all concerned about incidents like that. But we do have to put it into that context of this sort of shadowing being rather routine, but not so much the actual collision itself.
And so how significant would you say the incident is, Shihab, given the context of the relations between U.S. and Russia right now?
Well, I mean, this is why international news organizations are leading with it, because clearly there's a great deal of tension between the U.S. and Russia. But then again, I think it's very important to keep this into the context of the sort of interactions and engagement that we see on a pretty routine basis between the air forces and the drones of adversarial countries like the U.S. and Russia. We know that Joe Biden was briefed earlier this morning. The State Department says it will be expressing its concerns to Russian officials. There's a Pentagon briefing that was already scheduled, which is going to be happening in the next half an hour or so. So perhaps we'll learn a little bit more about how the U.S. is viewing this, and also about the recovery efforts for the drone. Still nothing, though, from the Russians. I think that would be rather interesting, because you have to remember, of course, these Reaper drones are quite substantial themselves. It'd be interesting to know what sort of damage this may have done to the Russian aircraft as well.
All right, that is Shihab Rattansi joining us live with the latest from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Shihab.